Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek here.
And Jason.
It's got the twofer again, and we've got a foursome of stories. So, Jason, why don't you kick us off with the enduring legacy of the Depp Heard trial?
The question that's really coming out of this, we all know the outcome and his great win and her great loss. And the question is there a significant impact on the Me Too movement? Is this the end of the Me Too movement? Is just an isolated case where we had what most people think is an unsympathetic female alleged victim who couldn't get the jury on her side and therefore lost this isolated case? Or have we seen a backlash against the 5 years, right? 2017 through 22. I think that's the reign of the Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, and then it sort of started it off. And we
thought there'd be a lasting impact of the Me Too movement, but is this now a reset? That's the big question on everyone's mind. Or was Amber, as you said, just perfectly bad candidate to carry this mantle, and it's going to be a one-off? She was singularly unsympathetic. She actually was lying, according to this jury, and we should just sort of pull that out as an exception and not derail this movement itself.
Yeah, I think it's important in these situations when discussing kind of, overarching issues to just take a step back and to realize the idiosyncrasies that this case had, the particular elements of this case. And what I've been so struck by, and this has been talked about many, many times, but I think it's really it's clarified for me at least, is the real dislike that people had for Amber Heard, which, by the way, personally, I think a lot of it is unfair. I think a lot of it has been social media spin. But the reality is there. If you look on comments on the YouTube videos that we've put up and other things, it is, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it is like 95% pro Johnny Depp, anti-Amber Heard from both men and women alike. So I think it is difficult to draw any conclusion from that the Me Too movement has taken a step back. It seems more this is isolated.
Yeah, I want to push back a little bit. I think you're right. The way I've been reading these comments is the initial read I had was, is this just, older white men clinging to their last vestiges of power while the earth moves beneath their feet? And that's what a lot of people said, like, oh, they're going to naturally be inclined to follow a Johnny Depp because this is the person they can really rally behind to stop the Me Too movement. I don't think that's been what we've been seeing. We've been seeing it across the board. That said, I do think this has a real impact on the movement, because one of the central tenets of the Me Too movement was believe victims. Believe victims. That was it. It was don't question them. Listen to their stories. There were all these statistics thrown out about more than 99% of the stories are actually based in truth, even if not fully true, have a kernel of truth, and we need to therefore have a presumption that what we're being told by people who say they were abused is true. That was blown up in this case, and you're right. Maybe she's in the 0.01% of people who just absolutely fabricate stories. It was so central. I think of it this way, Jason. I think, First Amendment cases are made by the difficult things that people say, not by the easy things that people say. So Amber, yes, is a difficult person to situate into the Me Too movement, but that's where the Me Too movement is the most important, right? When you have someone who says they're a victim but isn't necessarily a sympathetic person.
Are you suggesting that the Me Too movement, that the verdict in this case is a reflection on the passing of the Me Too movement, or are you saying that the verdict in this case is going to inspire a backlash against Me Too? So now we are less likely to believe women going forward because we have an Amber Heard who people didn't believe.
I think that's what I'm saying more, is that this will spark a repudiation of the entire movement in a way that it shouldn't, right? I mean, I don't think anyone would say that this one-off situation should have a dramatic impact to reverse the entirety of the Me Too movement. I guess some people would say they disagree with it, at inception, but that's a fringe sort of element. But I do think it will inspire this. It seems to be a repudiation of that moment in history where we were saying, let's believe everyone. There are a lot of abusers out there, and now we've got to pull the rug up and see all the cockroaches scatter. It's not just Harvey Weinstein. And remember, the movement got kind of far afield. It went it started with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Bill Cosbys, but then it got out into the what's the guy from Master of None? Aziz Ansari.
Aziz Ansari,
where it started to feel like, has this movement gone too far? Was this just a bad date? And I remember tracing that, and I was like, well, at some point it's going to capture someone who doesn't seem to fit into the Me Too movement, and there's going to be a pendulum swing, and I think we're now there.
I think it's dangerous for you and me as a couple of privileged white dudes to be talking about this necessarily, or to taking positions. But look, if those numbers that you sort of threw out, and I granted you weren't being scientific about it, that 99% of women should be believed, we know that's not the case, right?
Yep.
It's a larger percentage than 1% where claims are concocted. And there have been enough stories, the Duke Lacrosse story of about 15 years ago, if you remember that, the Tawana Brawley story of 25 years ago, if you remember that. There are enough isolated stories that we know it's greater than 1%. The concern that I have is we know that the vast majority of women who come forward are telling the truth. We know that men have found shelter in the court systems and in their privilege for a long, long time. And if we're going to hold up this one case as the new beacon, meaning that most women don't tell the truth, or that we really need to look with a sideways glance at women's claims, that really does do a disservice to the movement and to women everywhere, and it's going to cause the same problems we had up until a few years ago.
Now, I want to talk about Tarana Burke, who is the founder, to the extent there is a founder of the Me Too movement. It is Tarana Burke, who I think initially had the hashtag. She said the outcome, the notion that the outcome of the Johnny Depp trial would end the movement itself, she said, is nonsense. She said the Me Too movement isn't dead. The system is dead. This is the same legal system that y'all have been relying on for justice and accountability for decades to no avail. When you get the verdict you want, the movement works. When you don't, it's dead. She's saying that notion is ridiculous. I push back on, we're both lawyers here. I don't think the legal system is dead. I think this is the legal system working. Now, whether you like the way the legal system works is an entirely different situation than sort of whether it works to me, right? I mean, the legal system is, look, we have a jury system. It has a lot of flaws. It's the form of justice we've decided to use in this country, though, where we have 7 people who are not experts listen to witnesses and assess their credibility. Right. That is what the jury system is.
Right.
They got there. You can't say it's wrong. Right. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that the jury sat there, they didn't believe Amber Heard. Now, it's only 7 people, so I don't think it's this grand vindication of Johnny Depp that Johnny Depp wants to say, I've now cleared my name. No, 7 people sat in a room and agreed that Amber Heard was lying. That doesn't mean that the entirety of the country, it just means that he won this court case. But I don't also think that it means that the jury system doesn't work. I think it does work.
Yeah, Winston Churchill said about democracy, right? Democracy is a terrible form of government. It's just the best we've got.
Yes.
The jury system is a terrible terrible way to resolve disputes. But it's the best we've got. And obviously, these folks, the main purpose of a jury is to assess the credibility of witnesses and their competing testimony. In this case, it was directly competing testimony. He beat me. I never touched her. And the jury has to assess credibility. You certainly don't want to leave it into one person sitting up in a robe.
Although most of the world does.
Most of the world does
have a judge sit up there and assess
most
credibility.
Most of the world also lives under a tyrannical government.
That's right.
I mean, that's not what we want. We want a system where a jury of our peers, people of our peers, assess credibility. And here, they found her totally non-credible. Yep. And that's we live with that. Some people don't agree with it. We have colleagues of ours here who are outraged that the jury found the way they did and think the jury system should be abolished because of it.
Yeah. But be careful what you wish for, Tarana Burke. If you're saying the jury system it failed you here, it'll get you the results you want in a lot of other cases. So be careful. Be careful about those sort of grand sweeping pronouncements.
Speaking of countries that have not always had a fair and free democracy,
although we got our common law system from this place, but yes,
let's talk about the British government. Queen Elizabeth had her Jubilee, her 70-year anniversary of the monarchy, which is pretty incredible. I mean, just the fact she's 96 years old, still seems to be completely with it from all indications, right?
Yeah,
she's
showing
physical
her age,
element, physically, but it seems that she's still, from what we can tell, mentally
out there waving,
doing
her queen stuff.
Doing more than out there waving, she's not being propped up. But a few things have come out of this. The little boy, what's his name?
Louis. Louis has stolen the show from his great grandmother for sure.
Right.
He's the youngest of Prince William.
Right. But the biggest
and
story,
of
the course,
faces, the whole thing.
This is the reunion of Meghan and Harry. They've come back to London. They have celebrated sort of alongside their relatives, the Queen's Jubilee. What do you got there?
Yeah. So everyone is looking at what's interesting to me is the Queen's Jubilee is about her 70 years on the throne. No monarch has ruled for 70 years.
Is that true? Any monarch in the world? It might be true, actually.
Certainly in
England,
it is true. She's passed Victoria by.
Yeah.
She blew past Victoria.
Yeah.
I don't know that's true. There's probably some sort of baby that was crowned king and ruled for 80 years in some country. But this is a big deal, 70 years. Yet all the stories are about who's there and who gets to go and sit on the balcony. Well, the biggest one is Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They are not on the balcony. The balcony for a lot of these, a lot of the pomp and circumstance you see is important, right? That's where we're seeing, Louis making the faces at the flyovers and so forth. So being on the balcony is an important symbol of the closeness of the royal family. They're not on the balcony. They are watching from the Major General's office, which sounds right out of like a Gilbert and Sullivan, a modern Major General. Right. And they're over there with the other important people. There's the Queen's other great and great grandchildren, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. But Harry, you would expect, is a part of the nuclear royal family, and he's not up there. Obviously, there's been a lot of friction over the past few years with them leaving the royal family and Meghan and all those sorts of things. But it's interesting.
It's remarkable in that he obviously the grandson of the Queen, and was always thought of as being her favorite grandson.
Yeah.
She loved this little guy. He was the precocious one. He says
grandma says things to me that she doesn't say to other people.
Exactly.
That whole thing.
They clearly had a special relationship. But look, he, after he married Meghan, they left the royal family. He still holds some royal title, but not all the royal prerogatives. And one of the prerogatives that he lost was the ability to stand on the balcony for the Jubilee.
Yes.
And we as Americans kind of laugh at these old traditions. It's very important to the British people, and I think it's very important to Harry. I think Meghan, my take is saying, good. We don't want to be up there with them anyways.
This gross old fussy family.
Right,
this
exactly.
is ridiculous.
Right.
Yes.
And I think it pains Harry to the core.
I couldn't agree more. I think this has to gnaw at him. This is his entire existence is built around the royalty of his blood, and he was left out of one of the biggest celebrations for the royal family in years. You only get these jubilees every 5 or 10 years, and she's getting on in years. This could be the last one.
Yeah.
I was told by a very good source it was pretty tense today, that behind the scenes apparently there was some disquiet from palace officials that Meghan and Harry turned up apparently 15 minutes late, not for the actual start of the parade, but 15 minutes later than they were supposed to. And apparently it was all quite frosty behind the scenes, and the rest of the family went out in the garden and were milling around, and they just disappeared. So there's already a lot of tension there, and the only glue, it seems, in this whole tension is the Queen.
Absolutely.
And she's now not going to be there.
It's a big deal that he's not on the balcony. Now, there is some sort of counter narrative that there's still warmth left because Queen Elizabeth had not met her youngest great-grandchild, Lilibet, who is Harry's daughter. She had met Archie, but there are now reports that she met Lilibet. So that's good that they're still at their core, despite all the palace intrigue and the fact that they operate at a roof, they are a family. And, she's not going to not meet her blood relative, a little adorable little girl. So that's nice to hear. But I think there's still a lot of friction. Another guy who's not there is obviously Prince Andrew.
Right. Well, he's accused of many acts of sex with underage women, a whole Jeffrey Epstein scandal that he was wrapped up in.
It's fascinating that he will not have to really face justice, though. It's interesting to see this in the modern context where people are trying to sue Prince Andrew, people are trying to hold him accountable and charge him with things, but he really operates at a remove from society. Royals are the last people who are truly above the law.
Yes, that's right.
You can't capture them.
Let's not hold our breath. Prince Andrew will never face a court of law. He will always be allowed to get away with these crimes, these alleged crimes that he committed, and who knows, may still be committing. And
it's remarkable to see it in the modern context.
A man of great privilege and power, and they get away with things for a long time. Any questions about the name Lilibet at all?
It's the closest to the Queen, right?
Yes,
right. The Queen is, I think, her nickname on the crown is Lilibet, right? Isn't?
Oh, is that right?
I think so.
But her name's Elizabeth, and they named this kid officially Lilibet. It's Little Elizabeth, I think, is probably a derivation.
These Brits, I don't know their nicknames.
Let's quickly talk about J-Lo and Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
They, obviously have been house hunting for a long time. They're clearly, engaged and going to spend the rest of their lives together, the whole thing. And to, formalize that a little bit more, they've been searching for houses and may have actually seized one. They There is a good story out there. Their car was spotted at a massive estate in Beverly Hills, moving trucks outside. We haven't gotten official word that they purchased the house, but it's a $60 million house, formerly owned by James Packer, the
Mariah Carey's paramour. Yeah.
well, billionaire Australian shipping magnate or something. Or am I making
I don't know.
that up?
I feel like we always default to shipping magnate, right? When in doubt, just say he owns some ships. And
We're going to go shipping magnate. But $60 billion house, $60 million house, multi-billionaire James Packer, multi-hundred millionaire J-Lo and Ben Affleck.
You know who lived there before?
Who's that?
Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman.
Goodness, who knew that? They have that
those
kind
walls
of coin,
could talk.
huh?
It's amazing. I just imagine Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman's house being, miniaturized in some way, like all of the doorways or like a Hobbit house.
Boy, oh boy, this is really going.
No, I don't think that's negative to them. They're small people. I don't think they would
are
say
small
we're
people.
large.
Yeah, but I also picture Rhea and Danny living in a house with like old newspapers stacked up in every corner and sort of a maze that they have to walk through in order to get from room to room.
Is Rhea doing the crossword puzzle in the morning and a breakfast nook?
Yes,
That's all I imagine.
Yes. I'm going to get to the 1984 Hollywood Reporter in just a minute. And meanwhile, I picture J-Lo and Ben having grand, open, sweeping, views of everything with no walls in their house whatsoever.
Imagine big tacky lawn ornaments being brought out of these moving trucks. Don't you imagine? I want to see the clash of their styles because I think of Ben as sort of a Boston guy, and her as a sort of larger than life, big style. So I want to see how those two things really merge.
They're going to be married forever and ever, right? This is going to last.
Listen,
she's been married a number of times, and
they're at the midpoint of life. You don't really want another divorce under your belt, right? I mean, So I think they're probably in it for the long haul. We'll see.
Let's wrap things up with Nene Leakes. This story, fascinates us because it's a wrinkle in the law, right? She began dating a gentleman. You say his name for me?
Yeah. So she's been dating
just his name.
The husband. So his name is Nyansala, I believe. Nyansala. This is a married man. His wife is named Malamine Temesio, who has filed a lawsuit against Nene Leakes. Now, she filed it in North Carolina. We'll tell you why that's important. But the lawsuit essentially says, Nene, you stole my man. This was a married man. You started sleeping with him. This was a very public spectacle. You put it all over your Instagram. It started to alienate my husband from me. I can no longer get affection. I can no longer get emotional support. I can no longer get financial support. We have now separated in December, and you owe me, Nene, not my husband. I can go through a divorce with him, but you have committed a tort against me. You owed me the duty of not sleeping with my husband, and in North Carolina, you can sue over it. What's it like, Jason?
Right, so this old legal adage called the alienation of affection, and to Derek, as Derek just said, it comes when somebody, an interloper, comes into your relationship and steals your man or steals your woman from you. Sue them for alienation of affection. Something that
it's a homewrecker law. That's what it is.
It's a homewrecker law, and this was forever the law in I think all 50 states at one point or another. 43 of those states have since gotten rid of their homewrecker, their alienation of affection laws, and so it is now perfectly legal to pilfer somebody else's spouse. But in 7 states, North Carolina being one of them, which is why Derek made reference to the state, North Carolina being one of them, alienation of affection laws are still very much on the books. You are allowed to sue for it, and Nene Leakes is being sued for stealing Melamine's man.
Now, we got to tell you why this is sort of shocking to lawyers,
in this day and age.
This day and age, and when you learn about, what you can sue over, one of the first things you have to establish is some sort of duty, right? Like, if you go into a store and you slip in the store owed you a duty to not have slippery stores. You can sue them and say, hey, your floor was slippery. I expect to go into a store and be able to walk through the aisles without slipping on something. You owe me money because I slipped.
Right.
With a woman who steals, or anyone, a person who steals your spouse, that person doesn't owe you anything.
Right.
They don't owe you a thing. So to have a law where all of a sudden they are liable, remember, the person who owed the duty is the husband.
Right.
He obviously owed a duty of,
but there's no lawsuit
sort of
against the husband.
But there's no lawsuit against the husband.
So there's no law that outlaws cheating. That's okay.
That's okay.
You are just not allowed to steal somebody else's man. And specifically,
it's grounds for divorce, but it's not.
Right. And specifically what's happening here is you have to, the impetus behind the law is you can't target somebody else's spouse.
Yes.
This is not a law meant for somebody who just has a one-night stand out of a bar because you got drunk. That's
and
not
had
what
no
this is at
idea
all.
that the guy took his wedding ring off. That's an inadvertent way of cheating.
What has to happen here is you have to deprive the wronged married spouse of the affection that they would have had, not just for that night, but for all time. The person actually actually has to leave their spouse or lose affection for their spouse and has to have been targeted by the third party.
You have to knowingly do it. Nene had to said, I know that guy's a married man, but I'm going to steal him.
So the only other time we've ever seen this during our TMZ lives is there's a football player, excellent football player, potential future Hall of Famer for the Philadelphia Eagles named Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox was sued in North Carolina by a man who said that he targeted his wife. He ended up sleeping with his wife and then had the quotes from his wife, which said, "This man gives me something you simply could never give me, husband.
Yes.
And therefore, I want nothing to do with you anymore. I want to go be with Fletcher Cox."
Yes, she experienced something that she said in text messages, you can't give me.
Right.
Only Fletcher Cox can give me the satisfaction I need out of my relationship. And therefore, I want to leave you. It was pretty stark evidence for a law like this.
Right.
Is you what alienated me? No, we had our problems. No, we didn't have any problems. I just met Fletcher.
Right.
And Fletcher opened my eyes.
Right.
That's truly alienation of affection because
Right.
if you can
But-
hide your wife and have her never with
Right.
somebody else, then they don't know what they're
But
missing.
for Fletcher Cox, they'd still be a happily married couple.
That's what
But Fletcher Cox comes along and she says, "I don't want you, husband. I want Fletcher."
I know. I live in fear of this in my marriage because literally it wouldn't take Fletcher Cox. It would take anyone else.
Right.
And I can't allow. I need Mary to walk through the world like a Central Park horse with blinders on.
Do you live in
It's my
fear of
only
it?
chance.
Do you live in fear of it, or you're like, if it happens, I deserve it? It happens.
I have sort of like led with my head on this in my time here.
So much is going on in the world. Let's just try to show each other a little more love. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's a lot going on in the world. I'm already out here a husband stealer, and this is too much. And ain't nobody out here stealing husbands. Are they? I would never.
There's somebody going around, honey.
There's a lot of single people out here last night. I saw a lot of single people in the building last night. So I don't think nobody want to steal nobody else's problems.
But anyway, it's fascinating. Now, Nene, for her part, is saying, I'd never steal somebody's husband. Nobody wants to steal somebody else's problem. She's sort of making a joke out of it. But she's also probably talked with some lawyers who said, look, this is a real cause of action here, so we need you to come out and say you didn't intentionally do this. So she's doing it in a kind of funny way, and she's saying, I would never steal someone's husband.
You'd never steal it. The real defense is they had huge problems. He was going to leave her regardless of me. I'm not the cause of it. So
it's hard to win these lawsuits, even in places like North Carolina and Utah where these causes of action still exist. But it's fascinating to see because people are like, look, a homewrecker has done something bad. So there's a visceral feeling that there should be a remedy for someone who deliberately steals married spouses. But it's odd. Yeah. It's odd.
All right, everybody, thanks very much for joining us. Check out the podcast anywhere you find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, everywhere else. We're on YouTube as well.
We're on YouTube,
see
man.
these beautiful faces.
Download it there. Take care.
Have a great weekend. See you.